Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Got here a little bit early, so I'll wait a bit before I get really started. The training lasts about an hour and a half. We do record these trainings, so you can come back if you can't stay for the whole thing, or even share the link with other staff members who need to be admins. If you look in the description notes, I have some links to other videos. The first is the Business SMS webinar series. This is basically every 2 weeks on Thursdays. One of my colleagues runs this and basically just goes over the various SMS like registration and whatnot to know about as that's changed and for businesses. Beyond that, I have the ACDQs Pro, the Advanced Reporting demo, and the Introduction to Zapier demo. And those are just easier to show on their own demos versus within this training for various reasons. Feel free to make use of YouTube's chat feature to ask any questions about a feature as I go over it, and I'll be sure to address it as soon as I see that chat come through. And we are typically here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The only upcoming known Tuesday that will be missing would be Tuesday, July 4th, in observance of the 4th of July holiday. Beyond that, I think we're ready to get going. So here you see our dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. You can also get there from the virtualpbx.com website. There's a blue bar going across the page on our website that has a login link that will take you to this page. To get logged in, we need 3 pieces of information. The first is your email address. The second, and your email address should be in all lowercase letters. The second is your password, which is case sensitive. And the third is your account name, which is typically your business name. Right, so these 3 pieces of information. Now, if for some reason you can't get in, or it's giving you, login error, then down towards the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, there's a forgot your info link. So if you click on that, the box flips around and there's a couple pieces of information that it wants from you. So the first, it needs your email address, right? It should be all lowercase. And again, but then the other 2 fields, we only need one of the 2 fields filled, right? So we need either the account name or the phone number. Right, one or the other. We don't need both. Typically, the account name is the easiest. Then you click on Reset Password. This will send you an email, right? Which will link you to your account user page. That allows you to change your password. Once you're done with that, the system logs you out. If you try to navigate away from that page, the system will also try to log you out. But once you're done, you come back here to the login page. You enter in that password. And then the idea here is you can also click on the Remember Me box there. And then you get logged in. Now, I'm using a test account that I log into on a regular basis. So the system is taking me right to the dashboard page. If this is your first time logging in, the system will actually take you to that user page that I mentioned earlier, mostly because it realizes that when a user was first created, they weren't usually the ones who created their own passwords, and they may want to change it to something they can easily remember. So, and you can always do this on your own at any time. You can go back. In fact, if I click up here on my name, this takes me right to my user page. And here on this password box, I can change my password if I need to, or if I am so inclined. Now, as a system admin, I also have access to the account settings here on the left. The main things that people change here typically are the time zone and or the display language. These pull downs, some of the pull downs don't work on my streaming software, so I apologize. But for the language, you have English, French, German, or Russian. If you ever need to change the account name, you actually need to email our billing team. That's billing@virtualpbx.com, as they have to make sure to link up everything in order to make sure you're billed properly. Once you're done, go ahead and click on the close box, and you'll be taken to your dashboard page. Now, both in that first login on your user account pages and the account pages, this dashboard page, the users tab, and the groups tab over on the left, the dash wizard will pop up. And basically, it's just some pop-up windows telling you what certain things are. After that, it doesn't show up again. And you have the option to skip on each page. So you don't have to go through it, especially if you have multiple accounts. So we'll start at the top here. Your name, right? You click on your name, get to your account page, typically to change your password. To the right of your name, most of you will have a D&D toggle for do not disturb, right? So meaning you're not getting calls, right? It's a toggle, so you can just click on it. It will go to the right and become more white. That means it's on, right? Click on it again, it goes back to the left, it's off, right? And do not disturb just means your phones aren't going to ring, right? Any call that gets transferred to you, for example, or like someone enters your extension number, when they call in, they go straight to voicemail. All right, further to the right, you may have a phone icon. That would be if your admin added a web phone device to your user. So it looks like a little, phone handle. You click on that, it opens up a new tab, takes you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. That page has a login page, which uses your dash login information. That's what, so it has to be assigned to a person. Right. Put in your email address, your password, your account name via Chrome or Firefox on a computer. You can then use those browsers to make and receive calls. All right, next up, we have a little graduation cap icon. This opens up a new tab and takes you to the support pages. So you can look at various guides that we have written up. Some of those guides also include videos about that specific topic, excuse me. Little chat bubble here that opens up the chat window so you can speak to a support agent and they can walk you through various features. Three horizontal line icon, right? The menu icon, sometimes referred to as a hamburger icon. This takes you to other dash features. Now, primarily, we will be, here on the dashboard, right? That's the vast majority of the training. We will be covering some of these other topics, although like the call center is for the ACQ's Pro demo link below. But most of them I'll touch on at least briefly. And then the arrow to the right icon is the logout icon. And in case you're wondering, the reason I don't have a D&D toggle next to my name is because my user is part of the call center. So once you assign a user to be a member of the call center, right? They don't even have to be actually assigned to a queue yet. They no longer have the D&D toggle on top of their page. D&D and queues just don't work well together. It tends to mess up some of the metrics within the queues, and/or causes confusion when people are, hey, why am I not getting calls? And I don't have the web phone icon because I don't currently have a web phone on this user. All right, over here on the left, right, I'm currently highlighted on the dashboard, right? And then these are other core dash features going down. I'm going to be skipping around a little bit on this. So after we do the dashboard, I'm going to skip down to users and then go to groups, and then we'll go to main number and then work our way down through most of the others. Here in the middle, I got total users, right? I have 23 users. These are people who make and receive calls. Most of our plans are based on a per user basis. So the more users you have, the higher your bill is going to be. Then I have a total devices of 35 and a breakdown. Now, Dash was designed with VoIP phones in mind. If you don't already know, VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. That just means it uses your internet connection to make and receive calls, right? Instead of the old, phone jack in the wall that goes out to the telephone lines. All right, so first up here in the breakdown, I have a soft phone. And I have, looks like 18 of them. All right, so soft phone, that just means a software application that uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. Now, on this particular page, when that 18 bundle, that includes the VirtualPBX soft phone app, as well as any third-party soft phones. Right, third-party means someone else's app, right, not us. Cell phone, you can add cell phone numbers and landline numbers as contact phone numbers, right, as a device on your user, right? Same with Skype numbers, technically, right, because we just treat it as a phone number. Now, when we send a call to, say, a cell phone, right, so call comes in, goes to your user, which then goes to your cell phone, right? Your cell phone rings, you can pick up. Now, that interaction, right? When you pick up, you're going to hear a message saying, "This is a forward call. Please press 1." You press 1 to tell the system, yes, you're there. Yes, you want to take the call. But the main thing to keep in mind is when calls go to cell phones or landlines, right? We're just sending it to a phone number. Within the system, then you can no longer transfer the call, right? So if I'm sending a call to your cell phone, or the system is sending a call to your cell phone, and that person you're speaking to needs to speak to your colleague Bob, you either have to take a message and have Bob call them back, or the person you're speaking to has to call in and get to Bob's extension, because you're not going to be able to transfer from your cell phone. Now, if you're using a cell phone app on your cell phone and you use the app instead to answer the call, then you can transfer. All right, web phone. I mentioned this briefly. This is that Chrome or Firefox on a computer. So it's a VoIP device, just like the soft phone, right? Using the internet connection. SIP phone. This is a piece of physical hardware. It is a VoIP device. And basically VoIP, general term, right? SIP is a subtype of VoIP phone. It's basically the protocol it uses. Actually, basically all of our devices use SIP. And so if you're shopping for VoIP phone, you want to make sure it's SIP compliant or SIP compatible. Ideally, out of the box, you don't have to do any kind of firmware update to make it SIP compliant. So the SIP phones here are the ones that you can, what we refer to as auto provision on the system. Basically, they're more closely tied into the system, so you can make use of more of the phone's features and a lot of the features of the system itself. When we get to adding devices, I'll show you the manufacturers that support that, and you can see the models. Typically, SIP phones, right, as I said, they're hardware. So you have an Ethernet cable plugged into the phone itself, right, that goes to your router, so it gets the internet. Most phones these days also have another port for the PC, right? So then you have another Ethernet cable from the phone going to a nearby computer, and then basically that's just passing through the internet connection to the computer. Right, so that way you don't have two long cables going to the same desk. Down here, I have unregistered devices. I have 2. That means I have turned 2 of my devices off or disabled them on our dashboard here. Down below, I have total phone numbers, 32. Your plan includes some number of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. It's going to vary depending on your plan. If you just signed up with us, double check the pricing page. It will tell you how many numbers included, and if you click under the details, it'll expand out. It'll also show you what the overage is per phone number. It's a per phone number per month basis. Down here, I have a breakdown. I have assigned numbers and spare numbers. Sign number, I'm using it. Right? Someone can call an assigned number and expect to either speak to someone or leave a voicemail, be sending a fax, or joining a conference. Spare number, that just means it's a number on my account, so it counts towards my allotment. I'm just currently not using it, right? So that could be, I'm about to expand to a new area, and I have a phone number for that store location. I just haven't published it yet or made it active because there's no one at that location yet. So I'm just getting the number so I can start producing the marketing materials, etc. In that kind of situation, I do recommend first putting that number in service briefly so you can test it to make sure it comes into the system properly, and then you can put it back into spare numbers. I mean, the other reason would be if you're taking a number out of service temporarily for whatever reasons, whether that's, you had a user who had their own phone number and they left the company for whatever reasons, right? You would take that number out, or like you had a promotion running, promotion ended, and then you're okay, let's take this out so we're not getting calls about a promotion we're no longer supporting. Down here, we've got another breakdown, USDID and US toll-free. So US toll-free, US Canada toll-free, right? 800 number, 888, all the way down to 833. USDID, that just means a US local phone number. Right? So if you have a number in Saratoga, California, and a number in Saratoga, New York, they're both USDIDs. You can have international phone numbers on your account. If you're interested, you want to email our porting team, and that's PORTING at virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in, and they'll be able to tell you if, yes, we can get those numbers, and if there are any other additional requirements. Right? Those requirements would come from the country in question. That's not something we can control. Conference bridges. I have 7. That means I have enabled the conference bridge feature on 7 of my users, meaning they can host or moderate a conference. Over here towards the top right, I have this main number box that has got 4 phone numbers in it. Right? So these are your main numbers, right? The primary phone numbers most of your customers are dialing to get to your account. Right? These 4 phone numbers all behave in the same fashion. So they're all going to the same location. They're all going to have the same main greeting. Right? And then after that, they'll have the same routing options. Your conference number, you can have multiple conference room numbers if you want, but they're all going to the same set of conference rooms. This is the phone number everyone dials to join the conference, right? So that includes your staff members as well as any clients or vendors. And then they'll be prompted to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. The fax box number, you can have one main fax box number. This is your inbound fax number. It allows you also to edit your main fax box. So you can say, hey, whoever, when we get a fax in, send the fax to this email address, as well as set up an outbound fax permissions for your staff. All right, then we got the company directory. You have 2 links here, one CSV, the other soft phone. CSV just downloads a spreadsheet file, right? So if you're good with spreadsheets, you can open it up. It will have the list of all your staff members, their extension numbers, their names, and their primary devices, right? So if you like having a copy of that handy, or if people want it like pinned on their, cork boards or what have you. The softphone download link here, that's for use with the VirtualPBX desktop softphone application. So you download this file, upload it to the VirtualPBX softphone on your Windows or Mac PC, and this will allow you to show the status of the other VirtualPBX softphones on the account. Right, so like I could see that my coworker Mike is on a call, so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll call him in a bit when he's done, right? And then when he turns green, I can give him a call, and we can talk. Right? Now, the downside is your staff members can have multiple devices. So if you're using the VirtualPBX softphone in addition to other devices, this particular feature won't help you as much because you can only see the status of their softphones. Right? You're not going to be able to see if they're using their Yealink phone, or if they're using a third-party softphone, you're not going to be able to see that either. Virtual PBX Store, this link will open up a new tab, take you to store.virtualpbx.com, where you can order things like a physical VoIP phone or a router, etc. And then the account realm, this is unique to each account. It's used for a couple things. One, it's one of the 3 pieces of information you need to program or provision a third-party softphone. Right? So if you're using Xlite from Counterpath, this is one of the pieces of information you would need. The other thing it's primarily used for is for sending out a fax. So if you have your fax box set up, then you actually don't have to log into your Dash account to send a fax out. Most people do just because they need to get the account realm information. But basically, to send a fax, you go into your email address that's associated with your user on your Dash account, create a new email. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, the area code and phone number you're faxing to, little @ symbol, and then your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF file. Right? The system is not going to look at the subject line of the email. It's not going to look at the body of the email. It's only going to look at a fax, the attachment document, and send that, as well as the to field and the from field. Right? You only send 1 attachment per email, so make sure you don't have any signature files included in that email. And if you wanted a fax cover sheet, you need to include that also in your attachment, whether that's a PDF or a TIFF. All right, so back up here at the top, right? Sandbox training, that's the account we're on. Over here to the right, I have got caller ID. If I click on that, it expands it out. This is the company caller ID. Now, this pull down lets you choose any of my 4 main numbers that I have over to the right. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on this software here. But whatever number you select there, that becomes your primary number as far as your VoIP phones are concerned. Right? In fact, that's the number that your VoIP phones by default will use as their outbound caller ID. Right? So if I pick up my Yealink phone on this account, I make an outbound call by default, the phone number that shows up to the person I'm calling is going to be this 424 phone number. Also, it defaults for a couple other things. Company caller ID name, also referred to as CNAME. This allows you, this is optional, but to the right here in this box, you can enter up to 15 characters. That includes the spaces or special characters that we transmit as part of your outbound caller ID. Down here, company emergency information, or E911. Wants a North American address. If you're in Canada, then for zip code, right, use your postal code. And then for the state, use your 2-character province abbreviation. Once you're done, click on Save Changes. Now, if you did enter information in the company caller ID name field, after you click on Save Changes, that information gets transmitted to other carriers who support this feature. It takes them about 3 business days to update their databases. So whenever you make an outbound call from a VoIP phone on your account, right, your call, actually anytime you call from any phone, right, your call routes through multiple carriers before it reaches its destination. In terms of CNAME, right, not every carrier supports that feature. So if your call routes through one of those carriers, your CNAME information doesn't make it to the destination, right? So only the phone number makes it through. The other thing to keep in mind is that receiving carrier, right, that last carrier, they have ultimate control about what displays on the phones on their network. So we send them the phone number and the CNAME information. They receive that. They go, some of them will say, oh, that's fine. They send it all through, right? Everyone's happy. Then, or there's 3 options here for them, right? Second option, they get the information from us and there's a, no, we don't like your information. They look up the phone number in their own databases, which we may not have access to. And instead, so send the phone number in through, but then whatever name they have associated with that phone number, they put instead, right? We can't control that because we don't have access to their databases. And third, and probably, I don't know if it's the most common, but it feels like it is. Right, call comes in with the phone number and the caller ID. That receiving carrier goes, yeah, no, we're just sending the phone number and that's it. That last scenario is most commonly encountered when you call cell phones. Right, so like my cell phone carrier, they want to charge me like $10 a month to have CNAME information show up on every call on my cell phone. I don't really feel like I need to give them more money, so I don't. And I know other carriers have fees ranging from like $5 to $10, as far as I've seen. All right, next up we have hold music. When you click on this, it's going to expand out into a box here. Dash allows you to upload your own media files. It will play back .wav, right, .wav and .mp3 files. You're limited to 1 megabyte. So we typically recommend to record in mono, so that way you can get more data or a longer file to play. So a 1 megabyte MP3 is roughly 5 minutes. All right, you would just click the upload button here, click on the browse button to find the file on your device, click the up arrow icon. Once it finishes uploading, you click on Save Changes. This here is a pull down so you can look at any of the other media files you have on your account. This includes voicemail files, right? Voicemail greeting files, your main greetings, or hold music files. Right, but you can select it from the download or from the pull down here and then click on Save Changes as well. Now this hold music file is after a call has reached one of your staff members. Right, so call has come in, your staff member Bob picks up his phone, talks to the customer, says, hold on a minute, I need to check on something for you, right? He presses hold on his VoIP phone. That's when this music file will play. Right, so hours is actually part of main number. And in setting up the main number, you want to have your users and groups set up ahead of time, right? So that way you have destinations for the main numbers to get to. So let's go to users over here on the left. So again, that first time logging in, the dash wizard is going to pop up when you come up to this page. People with the little blue suit icon, these are your system admins. So they can do all the changes we've been talking about and everything else, right? People with the gray person icon, these are your standard users. They have very limited access. Like they can turn off and on call forwarding. They can check their voicemail in like call history, that sort of thing. They're not going to be able to make any significant changes to their user though, like adding extra devices other than forwarding. Up here at the top, you click Add User to create a new person and enter and the first and last name here and here, the system wants some sort of data, right? You don't have to actually put a person's name. You can put the word room, right? Or I think I've seen some customers put in like dot dot. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? So you can't reuse an email address for multiple staff people. This is also what the system uses to communicate to the user, right? In terms of password resets or voicemail notifications, the email address used for login, that's what the system goes by or uses. Password box, you create a password for the user. And then you have the main extension number. Now, the system is telling me that my next available is 1006. That's because this account started with extension 1000, so 1006 is now available, which means that original user was probably been removed. I can type in whatever I want and start a new series, or like I have a new department. Okay, all the people in this department are going to be 7000 series. By default, the system will create a voicemail box for the user for you. This voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user. So like if you created one user, right, then you add a VoIP phone to it, get it registered, then they can pick up their VoIP phone, dial *98, and then click send or call. That's going to log them directly into the voicemail box that was also created with the user. The system will then walk them through creating their voicemail box PIN number, as well as then recording their name and their voicemail box greeting. Right, so then they're basically set up. Include in the user directory, right, is put a check mark if you want them in the directory, or leave it blank if you don't. You can always change your mind later. You have the option here to send emails to an alternate email address. So if you don't want the email messages to go to the email address that you set up for the login, right? Let's say you created a fake login for temporary purposes, right? But you want those, like that login information or any voicemails that come in, to instead go to a different email address. You can put that email address here. So like, your own email address, or like webmaster at blah, blah, blah. And then lastly, you have send credentials to the user. I recommend checking this, right? So that way once you click on create user, that person then gets an email saying, welcoming them to their Dash account, giving them their login information, right? So that way they know, hey, I've been set up, right? Or if you have to add multiple, create user and add another. Once the user is created, you can always click on their name, right? So you can change their name if you need to. Here, you can change their credentials, right? So you can change the email address and their password. You can also change their, or click on the link there to send them the password reset email. Here, you can change the voicemail box PIN number. It's a temporary change. It's 4 digits. Click on Save Changes. Here's your option to send to an alternate address. Here's the option to be in the user directory. Over here to the right, little person icon. This pull down allows you to change a user into an admin, or an admin to a user. Then the little clock icon, this allows you to change the time zone for this user. So that way, like, their voicemail timestamps are correct. Usually it's just easier to search a major city, right? So Chicago, America, Chicago, right? Ringing timeout, the default is 20 seconds. That is plenty of time to route a call to a landline or a VoIP phone. If this person is only using a cell phone, you would want to increase this to 30 seconds, or even 45, even up to 45. There's also a user feature that's called Follow Me, which you can then adjust to individual devices, which we'll get to in just a little bit. And then any changes you make, click on Save Changes. Extension number box. So when you created the user, it automatically created automatically created an extension, but you can add additional extensions if you want to, right? Just down here. At this point, I should point out, when you just sign up, that first user was not assigned an extension number, right? Basically, we're giving you the option to set up your own extension number. So if you just sign in and you only have just yourself on there, you would come to the users tab, click on this extension numbers box, which would have, say, none in it. and then click on add extension, and then create your extension number, and then click on save changes. Users can have their own phone numbers. One thing to keep in mind is a phone number that is on a user or a group or a queue is available 24/7, right? So for hours of operation, those phone numbers, that's set up under the main number. So that's something to keep in mind. Down here are your options about adding numbers to a user. Add from spare is basically reusing a phone number, right? So you had a number in service, you unassign it, right? So like I can unassign this phone number, and then Aaron would no longer have this 323 phone number. But when I unassign a number, I don't delete it. It just becomes a spare number. And then if I click here on add from spare, I can add one of my numbers I'm not using to be directly onto Aaron's user, right? I would say click this, click add selected, and then click on save changes. I'll go back here and click on assign. By numbers is adding new numbers to your account. You have an option of local numbers or toll-free. Start with toll-free, pretty easy. You choose the toll-free prefix you want to work with. Click on search. It'll give you a list of phone numbers. You can add multiple if you want. Now, once you add it to the cart, you haven't done anything, right? You haven't reserved the numbers or anything like that. So if I did this and I walked away, right? Let's say my boss calls me and say, hey, I need you in a meeting right now. Hour later or whatever, I come back, I try to click buy. It's possible someone has completed the purchase of these numbers while I was talking, or even while I was in that meeting, and the order won't complete. You can also remove a number. So I'll do that right there. So now I'm only buying the one number, but you click on buy numbers. This system verifies no one else bought that number or completed the process. Otherwise, it will activate it and add it to where I've specified. Right, so this list of numbers is a dynamic list. You're competing with people in real time. Local, you need to know the area code that you want to search in. Any area code, including the toll frees, you can get this message saying that there's no currently available numbers. Right, that means that area code is exhausted. And basically for that area code, our only option would be to do what's called a back order, which is essentially saying, hey, if someone gives up their 3-1 area phone number, we want to get it. And then we would add it to your account, right? That would have to go through our porting team. Now, the downside of that is we can't predict when someone's going to give up their 310 number. So you could be waiting for a long time, potentially. The best option is go back up here to go back to search. Use your favorite search engine and do a search for 310 area code overlay. Right? That will, in this case, that will tell you 424 is the overlay, right? An overlay area code, that just means there are 2 or more area codes that cover the same geographic spot. Right? So your major metropolitan areas usually have multiple overlays. In the case like Los Angeles, there's multiple area codes in a given area, right? 310, 323. I can't remember the other Southern California area codes. But again, same process, right? There's multiple phone numbers you can choose from. You just click buy numbers. Now it's adding them to your account. And in this case, specifically to this user. Right, and then you click save changes. Again, that way those numbers show up. And you see here at this little page icon here, right? That lets you know that there's multiple numbers or multiple of whatever. All right, so I'll go ahead and just unassign those. And again, I haven't removed those numbers from my account. I just removed them from this user. All right, next up, we have devices. So here you see the existing devices. So you can always click on them to get more details. Down here is where you add devices, right? Spare devices means you're reusing a device. So like, let's say your staff member Carl retired. But he had a VoIP phone on his desk. You want to still use it. You can just simply move his VoIP. You would unassign his VoIP phone from his user, right? Probably then delete his user. But then you can move that device to another user and it would then work there. New device, you have these options here. First up is SIP phone. This is that physical phone. So you have these manufacturers to choose from. Some of them, like Yealink, have a lot of models to work with. Right? Others, only a few. No matter which ones you're going to work with, you want to find the make and model. Down here, you need to give it a name, right? So like Bob's phone or break room phone, what have you. I suggest not using things like phone 1, phone 2, phone 3, because 6 months from now, maybe, or longer, you may not know where did phone 5 go, or who's this phone 5. Just to make it easier on yourself. MAC address, this is unique to each phone. There's typically a sticker on the back of the phone, which will have that information here. If the phone's plugged in, usually under its status or basic settings, you'll have the MAC information, right? MAC. And then you would click on Create Device. Now, after a device is created, go here to Bob. You would click on it. Here, you would go to Advanced and then go to Miscellaneous, where it says Allow Reprovision. You would click on Unlock and then click on Save Changes. That's telling the system this phone is ready to be provisioned or programmed for the first time. Now, as far as our system is concerned, right, the dashboard, you're done. But you're not really done. You have to log into that phone's web user interface via the IP address. The computer that you use to log into the phone's IP should be on the same network as the phone itself. That's typically a security feature of the phone manufacturers. But within that phone's web user interface, you need to add a URL. Basically tell it to go to this specific URL to get your config file. For the specifics of that, for these various manufacturers, you would want to click on the little graduation cap icon here, right? That takes you to the support pages. This will then you would do a search for auto provisioning. That document has screenshots for the various manufacturers and a specific URL or specific syntax for that URL. That way, and in some cases, there's some other settings for each of the manufacturers that we want to make sure are correct. You would then save the changes there, tell the phone to auto provision, and then it should show up as a green device. It's going to, the phone itself will reboot a couple of times before it shows up as a green device here. Like you should have time to go get coffee, for example. Well, maybe not a run out to Starbucks coffee, like coffee in the break room. All right, cell phone. Actually, let's go back up to Aaron. So if we add cell phone, right, you just need to give it a name, right, and then the number, right, +1 area coded number, and then click on Create Device. If I go here on the demo device, that's actually a cell phone number. Again, +1 area coded number, no spaces, parentheses, or dashes. Now, by default, right, as I mentioned briefly, when the call gets to your cell phone and it says this is a forwarded call, please press 1. That's how the system knows that you're there and that you want to take the call, right? Now, if for some reason you don't want that, so if we go to Advanced and then Options, where it says Allow use of cell phone's voicemail, put a check mark here and then Save Changes. Now, you're not going to be prompted to press 1, right? Instead, when we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call. So like the primary example we typically encounter is you contract out with a automated answering service to handle your after hours calls, right? So they give you a phone number, say, hey, just send your calls here and we'll handle it. Well, an automated answering service doesn't know when to press 1, right? 1, it doesn't have fingers. And 2, it's just a computer that's reacting. So to make that easier, you would put this, use a cell phone voicemail. So that way when that pickup tone happens, when we send the call to the answering service, picks up, call is connected, the answering service handles the call from that point forward. If you do this on your actual cell phone, What can happen is your cell phone's voicemail can pick up, still a pickup tone. So that inbound caller ends up on your personal cell phone's voicemail versus the Dash account voicemail. Some people want that, some people don't. The other thing that can come up is keep original caller ID. So customer Mary calls in, reaches out to your cell phone. On your cell phone, you'll see customer Mary's phone number. If you've been getting hit with lots of robo-dialers, and actually since we're coming up on election season and not too distant future, at some point in the next year, you'll probably get a lot of political calls, right? So maybe you just ignore the call, right? I don't recognize the number, it's going to voicemail. Now, if you uncheck this, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number show up in your cell phone, you would see your main number. We go back to dashboard, caller ID, this phone number, whatever number you selected here, that's a phone number that would show up on your cell phone. Right, so then hopefully you would recognize your own your own company phone number, so then you may pick up the call because then it's most likely worthwhile. Oh, actually, let's go down to Arial here. All right, next up is soft phone. So first up, whenever you add a soft phone or a web phone device to the account, this warning message comes up, right? Basically saying, hey, there's a thing called wireless VoIP technology. So dialing 911 from that device might not be advisable if you're not at your normal location. Click on close. And then a larger box will come up. There we go. So this right here, the system defaults to you're adding a third-party soft phone. Right? You're using someone else's soft phone application. Whether that's because you're using it to add a piece of hardware that didn't come up under that SIP phone list, or you're actually really using other software. In that situation, right, you give a device a name, you would then copy the SIP username, right, and paste that someplace. Then click on the SIP password, copy and paste that to where you need it to go. Do not change this, that will break things. And then, whoops. Right, copy and paste your account realm. Those are the three pieces of information to program or provision a third-party soft phone. Now, if you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone, down here, right, below where it says View Configuration, there's a toggle, right? So right now it says Use Third-Party Application. When you click on it, it flips, and so it says Use VirtualPBX Application. You still need to give it a device name, but then you would click on Create Device, and then Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, the user gets an email saying your VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. Right? It's going to have the login information for the soft phone. They're going to have download links for the soft phone. Now, if you're going to make use of the VirtualPBX soft phone app, you can only add them directly to a user. If there's a Devices tab over on the left, if you add a soft phone there, you can only add third-party soft phones. Web phone, again, you get that warning message. It's fairly simple. You just give it the device name, click on Create Device, and then Save Changes. Right? Web phone uses your Dash login information. So that's pretty straightforward. All right. So user features. First up is caller ID number. You can only enable this on users that have their own phone number. But once you do, you select the phone number on the account, typically on the user. That becomes their outbound caller ID, right? Instead of the number you selected on the dashboard. And then you click on Save Changes. Virtual text, this allows for texting. You click up here to enable. You choose a phone number. The phone number should be typically on the user, be one of your main numbers or on one of your auto attendants. You click on Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, your staff member gets an email welcoming them to virtual text. It will give them login information, and there'll be a download link. Excuse me. So virtual text, you can use an app on your phone. Right? If you go to the Google or the relevant app store, look up virtual text, and it should come up, and you can download it. You can also go to a website. So on a browser, go to virtualtext.app, right? Apple Paul Paul. Again, you can log in there and you can send and receive texts. The main advantage of virtual text is that you can share your number among multiple staff members, right? So let's say you assign the main number to yourself and you add the virtual text feature to 5 other users. You can then share your main, once they're, added and, saved and all that, they have their logins. You can, right now, you'd actually go to our support team, but we can share your number to your staff. So that way all of you can handle texts to and from your customers. Now, if this feature is not showing up on your account after you just signed up, you want to reach out to our account services team, and typically they will cover this on their onboarding with you. There is a text or SMS registration process that needs to be done in order to fully enable the feature. Voicemail box. First and foremost, you need to have an extension number to make use of voicemail boxes, right? And that is because the system uses the extension number as the voicemail box number, excuse me. But you click here to enable, and typically what you see is this, right? Voicemails to emails is typically delivered, and that means we attach an MP3 file to the email notification. So call comes in, person leaves a message, the user gets an email. All right, they'll have to date, the time, who called, the phone numbers used, and what extension number it came to, MP3 file that they can double click so they can listen to the message. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot hold any more. Right, so this email notification doesn't delete the messages by default. Now, this default setup that I have set up here, you have 3 ways to listen to messages and 2 ways to manage messages, right? So one of the ways to listen to via email, right? The other 2 ways are you can call into a number that goes to your virtual receptionist, right? Or so one of your main numbers or auto attendant numbers. When they hear that main greeting, they can enter *97 from like a cell phone or landline. They can do it from a VoIP phone, but from their own VoIP phone, they can do *98. That takes them directly to their voicemail box. So they can listen to the message over the phone. They'll have the option to delete a message or mark it as listened and saved for later. The other way to check messages is via email, or not, sorry. We already covered that. Via the user portal, right? So log into dash.virtualpbx.com. And let me close that. So here, one of the options here is the user portal. Every staff member has access to their own user portal, and it defaults you to your voicemail tab. Right, so there you can listen to the voicemails directly in the browser, you can download them, you can delete them. Now, if you have a voicemail box that's particularly busy, right, and so like one person cannot keep up with managing the voicemails, then what you would want to do is right here where it says delete after notification, put a check mark here, and then save changes. So now what happens is someone leaves that voicemail, right? The email is sent out with the voicemail attachment. The system deletes the voicemail from the system, right? So that way there's no other way to check it other than via email, but that way the voicemail box doesn't get full either. Follow me. This is good for users with multiple devices. You would just click enable. And by default, it says it's not ringing anything, right? Because you have to tell it what devices to make use of. Over here on the far right, it says do not ring. They're checked. So click on the check marks to remove the check marks, and then click and drag to have a ring time. Now, up here along the top are timestamps. This last one you can edit, right? It defaults to 120 seconds, but we can say, hey, let's do 90, and then enter. And then you click this distribute button. So now it's ringing this soft phone first, whoops, and then this cell phone number. Right, and every call that comes to my user directly rings in this order. Right, if I don't like this order, as an admin, you have to come in here. You can click and drag and move it, distribute, or you can do something like that as well, which is be blast ringing, and then save changes. Now, one thing to know about Follow Me: if this user is part of a ring group, a call from the ring group ignores this feature. It's going to use the ring group settings, and it's going to ring both devices no matter what. Fax box, users can have their own fax boxes if you want them to. Right? So this would be in addition to your main fax box number. Now, when you enable it, you have the option to use a spare number, buy a new number, or assign a new extension. I recommend making use of a phone number. That way the user can send and receive faxes, right? If you choose to assign an extension number, right, that saves you money in terms of it's not using a phone number. However, this person will only ever be able to receive faxes. Anytime they send out, they're going to get an error because of caller ID. Right? The system will use their fax box information for outbound caller ID purposes, and if there's only an extension number associated with it, that's what it uses. Conference bridge. Up here, you click to enable. As an admin, the only thing you really need to do is then set up the conference room PIN number and then save changes. Your staff members can change their conference room PIN numbers under the user portal. The enable web conferencing, that's would be in-house use only. Right, so anyone outside of your Dash account joining conference are not going to be able to make use of it. Or the conference or video conferencing. Call forwarding, you have off, on, or failover mode. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own via the user portal or directly on their VoIP phones. Failover mode is something you have to set up for them. And this is for users with VoIP phones, right? So basically, failover mode is their VoIP phone becomes unregistered, right? Dog ran by, pulled out the Ethernet cable. Call comes in just at that moment. Well, instead of going right to that user's voicemail, it instead would automatically forward to the phone number you designated, right? +1, area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And then you click on Save Changes. Customize call recording. So when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? You have to tell it you have to tell the system what kind of calls to record. Right, so first up, inbound internal would be a coworker call, right? So Bob called Aaron, or maybe I don't want to record my staff calls to each other, right? Inbound external, customer Mary called Aaron, right? Outbound internal means Aaron called coworker Bob, right? Outbound external is Aaron called customer Mary back. And then I would click on Save Changes. So normally we see something like this, or just all of them, and then Save Changes. If you have heavy call volume and you record every call, I would encourage you to double check or talk to our account services team. There's a feature that we have called AWS integration. This allows you to link your Dash account to your own AWS account, so you can store your call recordings there, because at high volumes, it's going to be more cost effective to store your call recordings on AWS than with us. Music on hold, you can have your staff members have their own hold music, right? You click enable, you upload a file, .wav.mp3 under 1 megabyte, recommended recording in mono, click the up arrow icon, and then save changes. Like that's if you want your sales staff to have hold music that's promoting specials and whatnot, whereas say the rest of your staff, you're just like, hey, go visit our website. Do not disturb. If you enable it, that means calls to this user aren't going to ring their devices, i.e. they have to be heads down on a project. Don't call them. Hot desking is a VoIP phone feature. It's basically designed for like hybrid scheduling or shared office environment. You create a hot desk ID. So if you're using 4-digit extension numbers, I recommend just using that extension number as their hot desk ID number. Up to you if you want to require a PIN number. And then you click on Save Changes. So how this works, say Aaron comes into the office on Tuesday, he sits down at desk number 2, he picks up the phone at that desk. He hits *11, that turns on hot desking on that phone. The system asks him for his hot desk ID, and then tells him that calls will now be sent to this device, right? So the rest of his workday, any call that is reaching out for Aaron's extension number, for example, will ring to him at that desk at phone number 2. End of his day, picks up the handset, hits *12, turns off hot desking. Right, next time he comes in the office, say it's Thursday, Angela's sitting at desk number 2, he says good morning, and he just moves over and sits down at desk number 7. Same thing, picks up the handset, *11, phones will now come to him at desk number 7. All right, next up is groups. Groups, also called hunt groups or ring groups, departments, right? Basically, this allows you to send calls to a group of people who answer about a similar topic. There's some limited routing options in terms of you can have it ring them all at once, or you can ring them in a specific order. So up here at the top, you click on Add Group. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number. And then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in this group. Oops. All right. So we'll say so here I have my new group that I just created. If I click on the name, right, I can always come here and I can change the name. And then I have here group call attempts. Starts off at 1, right? This is how many times the system will offer calls to the members of the group. I can click the up arrow icon or down to change it. Low 0 is not a good idea. If I need to remove a group, I can just click delete here. Otherwise, click on save changes. Here, under the members box, shows my staff members. And currently, I'm ringing them all for 20 seconds. Now, along here at the top, right, these are timestamps, defaults out to 120. I can click and drag so that it rings everyone for the full time. Right, so now a call comes in, rings everybody at the same time until someone picks up. Now, anyone like Aaron or Bob or David, who I know for sure have multiple devices, whenever calls from this group come in, it rings all of their devices. It ignores the follow me setting under the user. Now, I can also click distribute, right? So now every time a call comes in, Ariel gets a call first. Every time. It does not skip him, even if he's on a call, right? So first call comes in, Ariel handling it. Say 10 seconds later, second call comes in. Well, that second call is still being offered to Ariel, so he might hear a call waiting beep on his side, maybe. Right? That just depends on the phone settings he's using. But after 24 seconds, then it goes to Aaron. Right? So then Aaron's helping the customer. Third call comes in, right? That third person is going to have to wait 48 seconds before it starts ringing to someone who can actually answer their call. But again, these are sliders. So if you know it's getting that busy as an admin, you can start adjusting the ring times so that there's less time waiting for hold for those later callers, or even just to go back to ring all. Down here at the bottom left, you can add more staff, right? So if you're having heavy call, like really heavy call volume, right? You can say, oh, well, let's add a couple more people here. All right, I can click distribute again if I want to, or just, oops. Now, just like under the follow me settings, right, I can click and drag. Right, so let's say like Ariel's been getting hammered and he's like, I got a big issue I have to work with on a customer. I can move him down to the bottom, then I can click distribute again. So now he's getting last priority. Any changes you make, click on Save Changes. Otherwise, you can cancel. Groups can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. Usually, they don't need to. Phone numbers, groups can have their own phone number, right? You can add from spare or buy new, right? Again, phone numbers that are added to a group don't have hours of operation. We got group features. First up is ring back. So call comes into the group, offer to your team members, right? When their phone starts ringing, that ring sound is then piped back to your inbound caller. If you don't want that, click enable here, and then you can choose a media file, or you can upload .wav or .mp3, under 1 MB, and probably best to make sure it's recorded in mono. Now, if you make use of ringback, you want to make sure that file plays as long as your hold time for the group. Right, so default is 2 minutes. So you probably want to make sure your ringback file is at least 2 minutes long. It doesn't. The system does not loop it for you. Next action. So add an action for when no one picks up. Right, so you click enable. Where do you want to send the calls if no one answers the call? You can send it back to your main menu. Right, so you're under virtual receptionist, which we'll be getting to shortly. You can send it to other groups, call queues. You can send it to a specific phone. Right, you can send it to another user. Most common though is sending it to a voicemail box. Right, and then you would click Save Changes. Allow call forward. If you turn this on, that means your users can make use of call forwarding. If your staff has multiple devices and one of those is like a cell phone, you don't need to do call forwarding, right? If you're only using VoIP phones and that's it, then you might want call forwarding enabled here. Caller ID prepend. This is for your VoIP phone users. You can add additional text in front of the phone numbers that show up on their VoIP phones displays. Right? Give them a heads up about the call, or you can add additional text. Additional numbers. Excuse me. You don't want to do both, right? That can be confusing. I usually default to suggesting text, as that's usually easier for people to realize what something is. All right, now let's go to main number. All right, so first up, you got main company numbers. If you click here, shows your main company numbers. You have the option to add from spare or by new, right? So you can have multiple main numbers. It's easier to see here, but any place you have a phone number added, there's this little gear icon. So you can update the caller ID for each phone number, right, for the outbound purposes, or to turn on inbound, right? So that way, if any name information is available, it will then show up on your staff members' phones. E911, each phone number can have its own E911 address. This is basically then allows you to assign that phone number to your various VoIP devices individually, right? So that way, for E911 purposes only, if you can assign the correct phone number and address to a specific phone for their correct location, right? These days, you have a lot more people working remotely. So if they happen to dial 911 from their VoIP phone, you want to make sure the correct address is sent to emergency services. Right, so you do that for each phone number and then assign those to the various devices. Prepend, another that VoIP phone feature, basically text in front of the caller ID. Right, down here, your option to add from, I think I already covered that. All right, next up, office hour strategy. You have 24-hour open office or custom office hours. If you choose custom office hours for each day of the week that you're open, put a check mark next to that day, and then set your open hours in 24-hour or military time. Also, down at the bottom, you have the option here to have your system closed for lunch at the same time every day that you're open. Right, you just put a check mark here, and then you'll have boxes to set your lunch hours. And any changes, click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if you're closed for holidays, put a check mark here. Over here to the far right, you have Add Holiday, you have Single Day, Date Range, or Advanced. Oops. There we go. Oh, so single day, like New Year's Day, right? So you give it a name, you choose a month and a date, save changes. Right? Date range, like I have here for Christmas holiday, gave it a name, start date, end date, save changes. For date range, just as a precaution, we recommend against a date range that includes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Years ago, that caused a problem. I haven't had it cause a problem for any customer in at least 5 years. But as paranoia on my part, I guess, I recommend, hey, just avoid that and you don't have to worry about it. For advanced, Again, you give it a name, you choose the month, and then this second pull down, you have the options first through fifth as well as last, and then day of the week, and then save changes. If you want to remove a holiday, you just click on the little trash icon there and then save changes. Right, incoming call handling. So for my main numbers, how do I want my system to handle the calls? Now, I have an open hours tab, an after hours tab, and a holidays tab, right? Because we set up those times. So during my open hours, I have calls coming here to my virtual receptionist, right? This is a link. It's going to open up a big box here. So on the left is my main menu, right? This is what people can press on their phone, 0 through 9, right, to navigate through the phone system. There's also a default action. Basically, if they don't choose anything, eventually the system will send them to the default action. You don't have to have a default action though. Down here at the bottom, right, add route. It puts in a new row. From the pull down, you need to select that 0 through 9 or just leave it on default action. And then, from the pull down, right, you can choose a directory, users, right? So you would need to have users in place before you can select them here. Right, we have call queues, so if you're making use of queues, groups, again, they needed to be added. Right, so basically you need your destinations in place before you can set up the routes to them, which is why I went to users and groups first. You have your options here to send devices or voicemail boxes. Over here on the right, we have our greetings, right? So this is where you say thank you for calling, usually give your organization name, and then give directions, right? In terms of press 1 for sales, 2 for support, right? You can include things like hours of operations or directions, depending on the greeting type you choose. So first up is text-to-speech, right? You basically type in the greeting, this system reads it back out. It's a computerized or robotic voice. The text-to-speech greeting is currently limited to 250 characters, not words, characters. So that in itself can limit you in terms of how long your greeting is going to be. When you use text-to-speech greetings, it names the file for you. And in this case, right, it's going to name it my main open hours menu TTS, right? Because I'm in my main menu and open hours. And let's say, so if I type in something here and like I called in, oh, that didn't sound right, or I forgot an option, that text would still be here. I could add on to it, right? I would click update and save changes, but now I have 2 files called main open hours menu TTS. So my recommendation is whenever you make use of a text-to-speech greeting, after you create one, I'll close out of this real quick. Over here on the left, click on greetings, find the file, and we'll see if I can find one real quick. I'm not seeing one, but basically click on the little wrench icon, and that's where you can change the name. Or you can just delete it if you decide you don't want to use it after all. But the main thing is to change the name so it's something you can recognize to flip back to if you need to. Obviously, if you create like 5 in a row, you have 5 files with the same name, that might be confusing later. Upload your own file, .wav.mp3 recorded in mono. Under 1 megabyte, just choose the file on your device, select it, click update, save, and save changes. Choose from an existing recording. This is the pull down, and the pull down shows all your media files, right? Main greetings, hold music, voicemail greetings. So that's why you want to use names that you can recognize quickly what they are. You can record it over the phone. Now, when it says a phone registered to the account, the system means a VoIP phone. This is a security feature. Basically, if it's a VoIP phone that's already tied to the account, the system knows it's safe to use. So it's safe to make a change to the main greeting. That's not convenient for everybody. So if you want to use like your cell phone, right, or you've got that friend with a great phone voice or radio voice, what you would do is come down here under settings and allow outside recording. If you turn that on, right, save and save changes, now you can call in with a cell phone number or landline. And then when you hit the auto attendant, you can enter the PIN number. Now, a couple things. First up, if you just signed up with this and you haven't created a greeting on your main number, right? If you call into your main number right now, right off the cuff, the system will tell you that the greeting has not been for this menu has been recorded yet. It will then ask you for the PIN number, right? So you enter the PIN number, and then walks you through recording it over the phone, saves the file for you, right? And it gives it some long alphanumeric string. If you have a greeting file in place, right? So let's say I have main open hours menu TTS, and I got feedback that my customers didn't like it. I know they go, oh, I got weirded out by it, whatever. So you call in, you hear that main greeting. When that greeting plays, you can still enter this PIN number. It will then walk you through recording over the phone. The file name, main open hours menu TTS, will still be there, but the content will be overwritten. It'll be your voice instead, right? But then, again, you can come to the greetings tab and change the name. Now, this PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So it's only good during my open hours. Like if I called in on Saturday, try to use this PIN number, wouldn't work. I would get an invalid entry message. All right. Professional recording services. When you click on order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings, where you can order a new greeting from professional voice actors and actresses. They bill you directly via credit card, and then they email you the completed file. So then you would come back here and upload your own file. All right, settings. First up, number of retries on misdial. This is how many times the inbound caller can make a mistake. In this case, they get 2 total attempts, right? Because they can make 1 mistake. Right, so they call in and they press 7. The system would then, after, in this case, about 5 seconds, play the main greeting again. So that way, hopefully this second time around, the person would enter 0, 1, or 2, or a valid extension number. Dialing timeout, this is how much time the system listens for additional button presses, right? So that caller calls in, press 7, the system waits for 5 seconds to see if they enter additional digits, right? Like 777, what have you. But if after that time, then it says, oh, goes back to main greeting, and then if there's more retries available, right? So after 2 attempts, in this case, the system would say, we did not recognize your entry, and say goodbye and end the call. If I have a default action, then after that second attempt, the system would send the caller to the default action. We already covered allowed outside recording. Allow calling, or allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on. And this just means when a person calls in, enters the extension number, if it's a valid extension number, the system will transfer the call to that user. Right? If it's off, that means your inbound callers can only press your menu options. Nothing else will be valid. And lastly, down here, we have to suppress the playing of invalid entry. So if you don't want that message to play that's saying we did not recognize your entry, goodbye, then you need to turn this on. And then you click on Save Changes. Right? So any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you need to click Save here. You need to click Save Changes here. Right? So you're clicking Save twice. Now, after hours, right, you have the same basic options, right? But because it's after hours, my menu is slightly different. But this option here, this is what's referred to as a live operator answer option. It's designed primarily to offer the call first to a user, a group, or a queue. Right? Basically, someone has a chance to answer the call first. If they don't pick up, then it sends it to the virtual receptionist. Right? So this is a pull down. So you can select the staff member, right? Particular person you want to answer the call queue if you're making use of queues, any group on your account. You can also select it to a device, right? So specific phone rings. And then by default, that's 20 seconds, and then it sends it to the virtual receptionist. I'm not sure why voicemail boxes show up here. You can also have a media file play. I recommend against that just because after the media file plays, it sends it to the virtual receptionist. And then whatever main greeting you have selected here will also then play, right? So that could be confusing to your inbound callers. But beyond that, this is the same as the open hours, right? You have your add route, your different routes available, your different greeting options. This option here, again, first pull down, you can select it to go to users, groups, queues, devices. You could use a media file here. It still might be a little confusing, but it's not normally as bad. And then the second pull down is you're selecting the specific voicemail box you're sending calls to, right? So we do see this fairly often under the holiday setting where basically, hey, just send everything to voicemail, right? The other thing is on this first pull down, you have the very last option, skip the voicemail. So not even getting an introductory message, not even offering the call to anybody. You're just saying, hey, nope, send them straight to the voicemail box, and then they can leave a voicemail message. The main conference number, you can have multiple conference room numbers if you want, right? Add from spare, buy now. If you select on the custom greeting, this is actually a custom text-to-speech greeting. You click to enable, type in 250 characters, and then click on save. Oh, even with multiple conference room numbers, right, it would still go to the same conference rooms. The main fax box can only have the one phone number, but once you have added a phone number here, you can click edit fax box. Inbound notification email, right, designed to put an email address here. So whenever inbound fax comes in, this email address gets sent a message. It's got the date, the time, the phone numbers involved, and a PDF attachment. Right, so you can just double click on it, view the fax, and go about your day. If someone dials your fax box number, let's say from their cell phone, right, here's fax phone, then hangs up, this person still gets an email. It just says that was a failed fax attempt. Now, obviously, when you see a failed fax attempt come through, if you recognize the number as someone you normally get faxes from, you'd want to contact them. Email permissions, this is for setting up outbound faxing, designed to put your company's email domain here, right? So this way, anyone at VirtualPBX, they can send a fax out on this account, even if they're not a user on the account, right? They just need to know the account realm. Beyond that, +1 area code and phone number, @ account realm, attach a PDF or TIFF. Auto attendance. Auto attendance, a plan-specific feature, right? Not on every plan. The two major use cases we see are for submenuing, right? So like you have a call comes in and then you're saying, hey, press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, right? And then you probably have to repeat that greeting again in Spanish. Well, then you would come to auto attendance and have a Spanish attendant and an English attendant created, right? So up here at the top, you click add attendant, you give it a name, you give it an extension number. The extension number, not something your customers probably would ever know, but your staff can use it to transfer calls to the appropriate attendant. Then you click on create attendant. Once an attendant is created, it starts off looking like this, right? You have the name, right? You have the option to delete, but it's defaulted to unavailable in main menu. That means it's a standalone attendant. So the other use case that comes up is for someone who's got multiple small businesses, for instance, right? So each business has its own phone number, its own main greeting, but you have the same staff people answering calls for both of these businesses or 5 of these businesses or what have you, right? You wanted them all in the same account to make it easier in terms of billing, right? You don't have like 5 different invoices coming in at different times of the month. You can say, oh, they're all coming at the same time, so you know what to expect. Now, if you want to do, in the case like of multi-language for submenus, you would actually click on this to make it available in main menu. Right, so then it's a submenu option. Attendants can have their own phone numbers, right? You can add from spare or buy new. They can have multiple phone numbers if you want them to. And again, this is typically we see more commonly on the standalone attendants. Extension number, right? Attendants can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. I don't typically know why you need that, but it's there. And then you have the wrench icon underneath settings. So you've got open hours, after hours, and holidays. This information matches what you set up under your main number, right? So your main number, that's your main account, right? These are essentially subsidiary accounts, right? Sub accounts. but they're going to use the same hours of operation and holidays that you already set up. But this is the virtual receptionist, so you can set up a greeting, menu options, etc. And then any changes, you click on Save Changes. All right, devices shows the devices on your account. Black devices means you have disabled them over here, right? So those are the unregistered devices from the dashboard page. Red means they're not registered, so we can't send calls to them. For soft phone or web phone, that could be that they're not logged in. Right? For a physical phone, like down here, right? That could be it's not plugged in. Could be there's a network problem, etc. Over here on the wrench icon, so for physical devices or third-party soft phones that you're using for a physical device, right? It's to program a phone that didn't show up under the list. You want to make sure they have advanced audio. Under the selected audio settings, you want to make sure G711A and G711U are over here on the right-hand side. That's just you click and drag. And then you click on Save Changes. External caller ID, you can set up a specific phone number for this device to use when it makes outbound calls. Emergency caller ID, again, this is where you can assign a specific phone number and address to a VoIP phone. So it has the correct address for it for E91 purposes only. Let's see, soft phones. Right, so this is a third-party soft phone. Typically, you could use Opus for any soft phone if it's along software, but typically you want to see G711A or G711U. Opus is what you should see for the VirtualPBX soft phone. And again, you have the emergency caller ID information here. Up here at the top, you can add new devices, right? So SIP phone, cell phone, blah, blah, blah. We've gone through most of these. For the soft phone, again, on the devices page, you don't have the toggle here, right? So you can only add a third-party soft phone to this page. Now, if you do add devices directly to this page, you don't have a way to assign them to anyone from here. You have to go to the user tab to assign directly to the user. Greetings tab shows all your media files on the account, right? So main greetings, voicemail greetings, hold music files. Up here at the top, you can add, right? So you can give it a name, find the file on your computer on your browse, and then click on create greeting. It will upload it here. You can't assign it anywhere. You have to go from this page. You have to go to the specific location. Let's see. So name, right? Name of the file. Source, right? TTS is text to speech. Upload means you uploaded the file. Recording means it was recorded over the phone. This column here allows you to play back the greeting directly in your browser, right? So you can check to see if it's relevant. If for some reason it doesn't play back, you have the download option, right? So you can download the file and listen to it on your computer's media player. And then you've got the little wrench icon here. So you can change the name to something that you can recognize if you need to, like for main open hours, menu TTS, or you can just delete the greeting if you don't need it any longer. Numbers starts you off on your numbers in use. This just shows you what your numbers are assigned to, right? No way to unassign or assign a number here. You do have the gear icon here, so you can update the caller ID, E911, or prepend for each individual number. On the spare numbers tab here, these are the numbers you're not currently using. So if you wanted to remove numbers from my account, you make sure first it's unassigned. And then you click on the box in front of the number. For instance, like so. And then you have this option up here this option to delete showed up after I clicked on the boxes in front. So I click there, it says delete numbers to confirm it. It says, yes, that's been done. And now I have less phone numbers on my account. Up here, you can buy numbers, right? So you can add from spare buy local or toll-free numbers, right? So they would add new spare numbers. Port, this starts the port process. And that just means, port just means you're moving a phone number from a carrier to another, right? So say from Comcast to VirtualPBX, you just give it a name, choose local toll-free. Then the system wants you to upload a PDF copy of your most recent bill from the current carrier, right? So from Comcast. Basically, as you go through the steps, it's going to ask you for like the name and address that's associated with it with your current carrier. It's going to ask you for the account number. It will ask you for the BTN, which is the billing telephone number. If you're only porting one number, that phone number that you're porting is also your BTN. There's a space there to add a PIN number. Typically, we see that on mobile numbers and on Canadian numbers porting in, although some other carriers do have a PIN number required to port out. If you're fortunate, those carriers have it printed out on the invoice that they send to you. Otherwise, you need to contact your carrier to make sure you get a port out PIN number or transfer PIN number. You also need to, or the system will allow you to download a blank letter of agency or LOA and then upload a completed and signed LOA. The LOA does need a signature, right? It can be a digital signature file, that's fine, or you can print it out, sign it manually, and scan it back in, right? But printing your name twice or typing your name twice always gets rejected and delays your port request. When we see that, right, printed twice or typed twice, we send you an email saying, hey, we do need a signature. But even when we've submitted it in those situations, it gets rejected anyway. So that's why we try to email you ahead of time to try to save a little bit of time. The LOA information, again, should match what your current carrier has on file in terms of the account name, the address, etc. Toll-free numbers take about a week, right? 3 to 5 business days if everything is correct. Local numbers average 2 to 3 weeks. They can be quicker. I've seen some port the next business day. If we get a rejection, right, we double check to make sure there wasn't a typo or other kind of error on our side that we may have done. And if there's alternate information, right, like in case of like an address rejection, we double check to see if maybe you had one address on the LOA, but there's a second address on the bill, right? We try both. But after that, after we've made sure that there's nothing else we could do, we then let you know, hey, this was rejected. Here's the reason we got. And at that point, you probably need to contact the current carrier to find out what information you need to port out. All right, voicemail boxes shows all the voicemail boxes on the account. Anything that has the entry in this third column here, that's the user voicemail box, right? Created when the user was created. Anything that doesn't is either the main voicemail box or like this one here is a voicemail box I created on this page. Up here at the top, add voicemail box, you give it a name, voicemail box number, and a PIN number, and then create new voicemail box. We click on the wrench icon here. So the basic information here, this is what you would use to check messages over the phone or make changes over the phone, right? To like the main greeting or the voicemail greeting, etc. If we go to advanced, greeting media, you can upload media files directly to the voicemail box or select some that are already on the account. The media file is typically what you want to use to upload a file to, right? The temporary is the out of office or vacation message. If something is selected under temporary, it plays, right? The media, so if you have something in both, right? Under media and temporary, an actual file in place, the temporary file plays, the media file does not. The media file will not play until you set temporary back to none. And then any changes, you click on Save Changes. Recipients, so your voicemail boxes that are associated with the user, they have a built-in recipient, right? The email address used for login. For any voicemail box that was created by you on this page or the main voicemail box, if you come to Advanced Recipients, you can click Add New Recipient. And you can do this to any voicemail box, even the user voicemail boxes, right? And this is just additional people for the user voicemail boxes, right? For any manually created voicemail box, you want at least one person here, right? So that someone's emailed when something comes through. Once you're done adding people, then you would click on Save Changes. And then options. So once you have a media file in place and recipient in place, right here under already set up, put a check mark here, right? You'd want to double check that allow attachments to email is selected. If this is one of your busiest voicemail boxes, you may also want to delete after notification and then save changes. All right, call logs. This shows your call history on the account. All right, you have today, this week, this month. Green arrow to the right is a call coming into the system. And you can see here the device is that. So this is the first leg, right? Call comes in. This is the outbound leg from the system going to the user and the specific device. And if you see normal clearing, that's a good thing. That means the call ended normally. The little fire extinguisher icon, this will create an email for you already addressed to support at virtualpbx.com. It will include the technical details of the call. Please type in the body of the email why you're sending it in. It's not always going to be obvious to us why you're sending a call log in just based on the technical information, right? We sometimes need the context. If you scroll down, yellow arrow to the left, right, that's an outbound call. And although these might be faxes, it looks like. Right here, though. Oh, here's a better one. Right here, you can see that Michael used his web phone to make an outbound call to this phone number. Custom, right, allows you to change the date range. So like I can go to the previous month and click filter. Right, all of these you can download the CSV file. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you can get a lot of information out of the call logs information that way. The filter will let you go back up to 12 months. After that, you would have to contact our support team, and we have to send that up to our engineers. They can go back up to a total of 18 months. After that, the data is not available. So if you need your call log information for any kind of compliance reasons, I would recommend you do so, download here every month. Feature codes, I talked about a couple of these, but these are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. This is a web page on our support pages. There's also a document on the support pages called the phone commands cheat sheet, which has the commands, but also has the context here in terms of how to use it properly. That's the dashboard. Let's go down over here under menu blacklist. Blacklist allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you are blocking from reaching your system, i.e. they get when they try to dial one of your numbers on the account, right? So main number, user number, group number, queue number, they get busy tone. You click edit blacklist over here. If you're creating a new one, you just click on add. I'm going to select an already created list, but you give it a name, and then you choose, are you blocking anonymous calls or not? By default, this is off, right? So that means if we don't get valid inbound caller ID, like they hit the number, then the call would go through by default. I turn this on this list, meaning that those phone numbers can't get through. They get busy tone. Beyond that, down here, I click on add number. I put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And then you keep clicking add until you're done, right? And then when you're done, you click save. You go click on back to settings up here at the top right. You make sure your active lists are under selected over here on the right. So like you can click and drag. Right, once your lists are over here, or if you've updated them at all, right? So I updated the block list, for instance, you then click update. So now these lists are the active lists, so any number that's on them can't reach my system. Faxes, this is your fax box manager. This allows you, it defaults to your inbound fax boxes, and you can get to any fax box on the account. So you can see here the date and time, phone number it came from, where it's going to, phone number it received on, a number of pages. You got the option here to download. You can see details. Oh, we can check the main fax box too. Outbound faxes, right? Same concept. You see here on the first, Aaron sent out a fax. It went to this phone number of pages, etc. Let's check. Now, if you have a failure here, that means we had a problem reaching out to the other phone number. All right, so in this case, we were trying to send a fax to that number and it didn't go through. Now, sometimes when you click on the details here, far right, you might get something more other than failed under status. Typically, that's all we see lately. And I'll double check. Right, and then success false. But sometimes you'll see things like user busy, right? That means when the system tried the number, it was busy tone. Now the system will automatically try to send out a fax 3 times. The email to fax logs, if you see something here, that means the system had a problem processing the request. Right, so you see the email address involved, right? This is in virtualpbx.com, that's fine. This is a proper format. Click on the little eyeball icon here at the far right, and then you see here, no valid attachment, right? Meaning was not a PDF, it was not a TIFF file. Or it could have been nothing too, right? They could have forgot to include the attachment. Number manager, this takes you to your spare number page. Reports, this is a plan-specific feature for advanced reporting. This opens up a new tab and asks you for a login. Under description notes, you want to click on the advanced reporting demo, and that will show you some of the things that can be done. If you're interested in this, you'd want to talk to our account services team, as that's a plan-specific feature. Voicemails, this takes you to your voicemail box manager. You can get to any voicemail box on the account. You can see the voicemail messages there, the date and times involved, phone numbers. You can play it back. You can download it. If you put a check mark in front of it, as an admin, you can move it to a different voicemail box, as well as set its status. Right. So if the voicemail box is getting full, you can delete it, and so it's no longer in the way. All right. Call center. This is an upgrade off of existing plans. It's possible you'd have to upgrade plans and then add queues on top of that. Under this show notes, ACD Queues Pro, click on that YouTube link there. That will show you some of the functionality of the queues. The main things about the call center is there's more routing options, right? You have things like round robin, which will equalize out over time. Most idle, so whoever's waiting the longest gets the next call, that sort of thing. Your staff members can set up their, they can log in and log out of the queue, which is what they can't do in a group. They can also mark themselves away. Like, so they, go to lunch, mark themselves away so they don't get, people aren't waiting on hold trying to hit them. Instead, go to an available member. And the main advantage over a group is if a queue staff member is on a call, the system recognizes that and doesn't offer them the next call that comes in. It would instead offer it to the next available person. The call center also allows admins to eavesdrop in on a call or whisper or barge, right? So eavesdrop, they listen in. Whisper means they're coaching their agent, so only the agent can hear them, not the customer. Barge means everyone can hear them. Dynamic caller ID. This is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID for your VoIP phones. I'm going to click edit on this existing one here. So you give it a name, right? So in this case, I called it 408 area code. I choose a phone number on my account. And in this case, I said, whenever my staff members dial area code 408, change their outbound caller ID to this 669 phone number to overlay for 408 area code. And that's, again, from their VoIP phones. Right? So my staff members don't have to think about it. They just dial 408 and automatically their phones will show up as 669 phone number. The other way you can do it under here is you can create a feature code. So in this case, my staff members have to dial *550. They enter the area code and phone number they're going to reach out to. And then the system will change their outbound caller ID to this 323 phone number. Right, and then save changes. Monitor, another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff members. It doesn't matter what phone they're using. Right, so if someone has 5 different phones on their user, you'll see if they're on a call, no matter what phone they're using. Right, so like each person would be, if they're on an active call, their bar turns blue, and it shows you some information about the call. You can specify by devices, or you can say who's available or who's busy. Over here, it's a little bit hard to see. The top one here, active inbound calls, right? Each call would have a box and who they're speaking to, and the phone numbers involved. Parked calls, the phone number of the person parked would show up as well as a parking spot number. Recording Manager, this opens up a new tab and takes you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. The login page there will ask you, basically uses your dash login information. You would see your recordings. You can listen to them, download them, delete them. Webhooks is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to link your Dash account to other software. If you go to the show notes, look for the introduction to Zapier link there, and basically that's how we link to Zapier, right? Is via a webhook. So you definitely have to have other software that you're linking to on their side, which usually has their own subscription and fees associated with it. This is programming to some level. I'm not a programmer, so this is a little bit foreign to me. I'm sure to people who actually program as part of their normal job, this is probably relatively easy. But basically, you create the new hook, right, down here, and basically fill out the form, click on Create Hook, and then hook it on the other side. You can go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code of what we have done, as well as that Zapier link in the show notes. You'd also want to talk to our sales staff if you're interested in this. And then lastly, the user portal. Right, so user portal takes you directly to your voicemail tab. So you can listen to your voicemails, delete them, play them back, etc. The call history tab shows your history of your calls. You can change the filter to go further back. The fax tab only works if you have your own fax box, right? But you'd see your fax history. The contact list shows everything in the Dash account, right? So as a user, they're not gonna be able to adjust this in terms of they can't add like mom's phone number, or your salespeople can't add their top clients' phone numbers here. This is just everything within the account itself, right? It just makes it easier for your staff to like transfer calls, etc. The conference tab, if your user you've enabled conferencing on the user, they'll have access to this page. Here is where they update their PIN numbers, both for themselves, right, as a moderator, as well as the PIN number for their participants. You typically want these to be different numbers. Here are your options to have people join muted or deafened. And then do they play entry and exit tones? While in a conference, up here, the plus icon, this invites other Dash users to your conference. The lock icon, right? So you can lock a conference so no one else can join. You can mute everybody, unmute everybody. You can end the conference call. Also, while in a conference, each moderator and participant will have their own box. This allows you to mute a specific person, for example, or kick them out. And then settings and devices. Right here, where it says enable call forward, this is where your staff members could enable call forwarding on their own. They just put a check mark here. But the phone number that they're forwarding to here, right, +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And then there are these other options here. Basically, keep caller ID means keep original caller ID. And then send voicemails to email would mean they have to press 1 to answer the call. Or in this case, they can just pick up. They won't have to press 1. Right. Also, ring my VoIP phone means they would ring their device that they normally use, as well as the forwarding address or phone number. And that is everything. I haven't seen any questions pop up in the chat there. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream today. Uh, I do thank you for your time. We do have another of the webinar, the SMS webinars again on Thursday. I believe that's 10 a.m. But if you click on the Business SMS webinar series, it should show you the next one coming up. And thank you